So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Yin Yoga during this Heart Week, I like to call it, Valentine's Week. So close your eyes and allow your body to become still wherever you are. When the body is still, the mind can be still. And we can take a moment to enter, to come into the space. Noticing anything that's present. As we come back to the mat, time and again, we're reminded that we have tools to help us stay on the path. Those tools can be anything, but in this case, it's our Yin Yoga practice. And so what tools or how many tools do you have to help you stay on the path and not go wandering off sideways? There's nothing wrong with wandering. Wandering can be really enjoyable. But if it takes you too far away from your own light, your own vibrational state, we can get ourselves in a little bit of trouble. It's especially important to pay attention to this now. So I'm really glad you're here using this Yin Yoga tool to help you stay on the path. Allow the hands to come to your heart center, holding that intention and maybe anything that you brought to the mat this morning. I'm reminded with the hands at the heart center that this vibration of the heart is very powerful. Stay focused on that today and maybe throughout the week. Take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, the hands can relax, the eyes can flutter open, and we can come back. All right, so let's start on our backs on our mat like we usually do for a little bit of a deeper check-in. So once you are all the way down, lying like you're going to do Shavasana. Like you're going to do Shavasana. And as you're down here, just take a moment to assess the sort of where you are this morning in your physical body. Remember that our physical body talks to us through sensations. That's how we have a dialogue with our body. So what's present right now? And then notice how your body is breathing. Notice if there's any tensions or edginess to the breath, or how the inhale and the exhale flows. And then finally, noticing the state of your mind. And we use this little bit of an intake, a little bit of an assessment to just become aware of what it is we need to take care of. There isn't anything wrong or right, it's just what's going on at the moment. So our first Satya movement is going to be actually on our bellies. And there's a couple different ways that I want you to think about doing this. The first thing, and we're going to go back to this later, but if you have a real glitchy back, like it's really bothersome to be on your belly or in Sphinx leg poses, put a low blanket under your pelvis. And that'll help bring the floor up a little bit. I'm not going to do that exactly. And what I want you to do here is slide your elbows right next to your body so that they're on the floor and your body's really close to the ground. Like you could touch your head down easily. And then from here, turn your toes under. And you're going to keep your head down. I'm going to lift it up just a little bit so you can hear me better. And I want you to gently take a breath and exhale, push through your feet so you feel your kneecaps lift off the floor. And then release it and come back down. Try it again. Take a breath, exhale, pushing the feet as if you're trying to move them away from you, and your knees will come off the floor. And I just wanted you to practice that for a minute. Keep your toes turned under, leave your legs relaxed, and drop your head down. On your inhale, just lift your head and shoulders, and I don't want your elbows to come off the floor, so it's a really low kind of movement. And then as you inhale, go back down, or exhale, go back down. Inhale, lift head and shoulders. Remember, elbows and palms and forearms are on the floor, and exhale. Next time you come up, press just through your right leg, inhaling head, shoulders, and just right leg. And then let it come all down, knee on the floor, head down. And then inhale, head, shoulders, and left leg presses. So the toes are still on the floor. You're not lifting them at all, but you're engaging the leg. We're going back and forth, nice and slow as you inhale and exhale. So the reason you would put a blanket under your pelvis is if this little mini back bending idea kind of tweaks at you a little bit. I don't want it to do that. I just want you to massage and hydrate the back body tissue. Inhaling, pressing leg and lifting head and shoulders. And exhaling, lower down, nice and slow. Let's do one more on each side. Feeling and sensing how it's different from one leg to the other when you're lifting. And down. And last time. And down. Good. Slide your arms forward, let your head rest on your hands in a neutral position. Let go of your feet and pause. And breathe. Okay, as you feel ready, slide your hands under your shoulders, press yourself up away from the floor. All right, so our first yin posture is to use your blanket. Now I've got this really thick blanket. It's kind of a challenge to work with it. So I'm going to try and leave it as it is, which is kind of like a trifold if I have it open like this. It's kind of a monster blanket. And I could try to do it, I can do it in quarters. So I want something that's narrower and higher if you can, and it's going to go across your mat. And then you might want a block or another blanket under your head, and you're just going to have to decide when we get here. So this is a supported chest opener. You're going to come in front of your blanket. You're going to roll down towards your blanket and get that blanket about bra line, shoulder blade. Then grab a hold of the back of your head, sweep your elbows inward, and start to gently unfold towards the floor. And this is where you might decide you need a block or something under your head. All right, so I can get my head down there. I don't feel any tightness in my throat. And then you're going to let your arms open to the side. Now, if you're like me and you have this big, thick, full blanket, it might take up a lot more space on your back, so you might need to move around a little to get it in the right spot. I want you to have some tension across the front of your chest. All right, and then if it starts to feel tightness in your throat, I want you to put a little something under your head. Your knees are going to be bent for a moment, and I want you to push into your feet to lift your bottom and tuck your tailbone or lengthen it towards your feet so that you're resting more with a long spine, long lower spine. And then you're going to rest here and breathe. Now your knees can touch each other, and you can go to that constructive rest pose. This is a really nice thing to do here. Or if your back feels happy, you can put your legs all the way down. And it's interesting for me, because I don't usually work with this particular blanket. And I find it a little challenging because it's not what I'm used to. And isn't it funny how we're so habitualized with what we're used to and how we have to adapt? And so it's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's actually a really good thing. And this is where we use our tools and our understanding and our awareness, our insight, if you will, to understand ourselves on a deeper level. And when we understand ourselves at a deeper level, we kind of know who we are and we know what we need to do to take care of ourselves. So I'll give you an example. I'm running this meditation course, and one of the women shared that the first thing she used to do before she started the course was open up her phone and start what she called doom scrolling. Doom scrolling. And I'd never heard that term before. I thought that was quite funny. But she said what happened now, because she's been meditating first thing in the morning, she doesn't have that instinct. She might do it later, but she doesn't do it first thing. And it has let her kind of find herself a little bit more and not jump into the outside world, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so we use these tools. I talked about this in the centering. What are the tools that you have that can help you come back and remember this deeper person of who you are? Like, all I have to do is sit in my office here and look at the birds, and it just softens me. I teach what I need. So I teach yin, I teach meditation, I teach yoga, because these are things I need. What is it that you need? What tools do you have? Now we're going to stay in this shape, but if you went ahead and straighten your legs, I want you to bend them. We're still in this chest opener, but now I want you to open your feet as wide as your mat and see if you can let your knees drift over to the right. So we're adding a little twist here in this back bend. And we're going to hang out here for a bit. I just want you to breathe here, noticing this little variation and how it changed everything. And we allow the tensions in the tissues to give us that indication of, oh yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I need to be. And if it's too strong, it starts to go into what you might call discomfort or even pain. You got to back up a little, put a block or something underneath your legs so that you're not so low. We're breathing into the left side of the body, maybe around the armpit chest. Where do you feel the tension? Breathe there. we just continue to explore this journey of the body now, the physiology in the body, and how it adapts and changes based on what we're asking it to do. Body looks for that steadiness, that balance and harmony in all movement patterns and all actions. All right, take a breath. And then slowly bring your knees back up to center. And you can pause there for a moment. Maybe reset your pelvis. And then very slowly letting your knees go over to the right. Or left, sorry, other way. And as you're there, you're going to notice it's a big difference from one side to the other. Most of us are pretty congested, I'll use that word, around the spine, between the hip and the ribs and the chest. And for me, my right side is much tighter than my left. And so when I'm in this shape, I can feel it in a lot of different places than I did on the other side. And I enjoy that curiosity. I don't find it to be scary or hard. I'm an asymmetrical being, right? We're all different and we all have two sides. And so we're just noticing. Allowing the hips and the legs to feel heavy, the head to feel heavy wherever you're resting. And we work with these tools, these practices, to deepen our awareness and insight, ultimately moving towards what I like to call a higher vibrational state, where we can tap into joy and compassion, connection and love way easier than we can jump and fall back into fear and grief and sadness. Those are lower vibrational states. So we want to keep moving towards the higher vibration. It doesn't mean that we don't have feelings and that we're not knowing what's going on. It's that you're trying to do self-care and take care of yourself so you can live in the world better. Nothing wrong with that. Take a nice deep breath. And then slowly, slowly bringing your knees up. All right, now the trick is, how are we going to get out of this shape? The easiest way for you to do it is to roll over on a side. Just roll all the way over and push yourself up away from the bolster, away from the blanket. Now the next thing I want you to do, we're going to use the blanket again. You're just going to move it down the mat, and now it's going to go under your sacrum. It's going under your bottom. And so same thing, you're going to kind of rest in front of it. That's the way I like to do it. And lay back and let yourself adjust. If you're using a blanket or a bolster like I am, it's going to cover a lot more of your body than if you had a block under there, say. And then once you're here, you're in a different action. I want you to make sure your neck feels free off the floor. If you had something under your head, make sure you take it away. And then our first shape here, I want you to bring your left knee towards your chest. You can hold it with one or two hands, either on top of your shin or under your knee. It doesn't matter to me. And then I want you to slide your right leg down as far as you can. Now, if your bolster or your blanket's not very high, you're more than likely going to be able to go all the way down. So if you haven't figured it out already, I'm working with opening up the front of our body right now. And we just did the chest and the upper body. Now we're working on from about the belly button down. So we're working in the hip flexors and that lower quadrant in the torso. And we find a resting place. And you can gently draw the knee towards your chest if you want a little deeper sensation. But try not to overwork your arms. Letting your shoulders feel relaxed. And you might even notice if your tongue is resting on the roof of your mouth. I reread this not too long ago and I'd forgotten it, but when your tongue is on the roof of your mouth, it's like the connection to your brain, and it keeps your brain really active. If you let your tongue drop off the roof of your mouth and rest behind your bottom teeth, you'll notice the jaw relaxes and there's a softening around the face. And the mind gets to relax. Just remember that with Yin, we can very easily turn it into a restorative class where there's not a lot going on. But I want you to keep striving for the sensation. So if, for instance, you're laying here and you're like, I don't really feel a whole lot, draw the knee closer towards you. You only have to do a tiny little bit of movement to notice a change or a shift. Remember, fascia is a lot more sensitive than muscle. Okay, take a nice deep breath. And then let that left leg foot come back down on the floor. Slide your right leg in. Pause here for a minute. Again, readjust yourself on your blanket if you feel you need to do that. And then we'll do the other side. So right knee gently comes up. You find a place to hold. And then you let your left leg slide down. And then you pause. Remember, we use our awareness and that understanding of the, the edge that we're in, right? We're not trying to go for the gusto. We're not trying to go for the biggest stretch. That's going to bypass the fascia. So try not to do that. But also looking for that, I call it the subtler tension, the subtler sensation, where you might not notice it otherwise. And I'm just adjusting my hand position so that I don't have to pull my arms, but the weight of my arms are helping my knee stay in place while the other leg releases. And just like that other shape we were in, do you notice a difference between the right and left sides? And keep checking on that tongue position because you'd be surprised how quickly it goes back on the roof of your mouth. And it is an unconscious habit because you're awake. Your mind needs to be active. Nothing wrong with that. It just doesn't need to be frenetic. Like they call it monkey mind, right? In yoga, like there's a ping pong ball in there and it's just bouncing all over the place. And one of the kind of amazing things I find in this type of practice, or maybe in my meditation, is how many thoughts you can have within a certain time. It's, hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions. They come and they go, and they come and they go. But truly, I believe that when you do these kinds of practices and you use these kinds of tools, your mind does soften and it relaxes. You have better focus, concentration, which I find to be a beautiful thing. Take a nice deep breath. And then letting your right foot land down on the floor, slide your left leg up. We're going to do one more here. And if you're on a block, this probably isn't going to feel real good, so you could take that away. But if you're on a blanket or a bolster, lift your hips up and slide it up just a tiny little bit more so it's more on your lower back. And then take your right knee up and then take your left knee up so your feet are off the floor completely. Your knees are wider and you're going to start to draw the knees towards you. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to tip your pelvis up a little. And I want you to go slow here because this is moving into the lower back region. And I want you to notice how that feels. Now, I love this position because my lower back feels really anchored and very solid, and I can feel the action, but I don't have this overstretch, if you will. But go slow, find where you want to be, and then pause. Your legs can be bent like mine, or if you really are enjoying this action, you could let your feet come to the ceiling and your hands come either behind your knees or up on your ankles or holding your big toes for a happy baby kind of look. So it's just an interesting way to do a little bit of a child's pose action upside down. And remember, wherever you're holding, it's not better or worse. It's not that, I don't find it to be a better position if I'm holding my feet or holding my knees. It's just different. So find what works for you. You can always take the bolster away or the blanket away and do it on the floor if that feels a little easier to you. Okay, go ahead and release your right leg or one leg down, and then let your other leg come down. Lift your hips up just enough to slide what you have underneath you away, and then pause on the floor here. And I want to remind you that when you get into these really sticky places in our body, where the fascia might be really tight and dense, it can feel a little vulnerable. So you just go slow, you let your body readapt. Remember, the tightness that you feel a lot of times is just a dehydrated fascial line, and it just needs a little bit of hydration. You can do that with movement like what we're doing. You can do that with massage. You can do it with rollers, all kinds of things. All right, so from here, we're going to roll over onto our side and come up into an all fours position. And once we're in an all fours position, just do an easy cat and cow here. So we're starting to move the spine in two different directions now. We've been doing a back bend, and now we're starting to move into the forward bending. And so we're just feeling our way through this nice slow motion action. Make this like we did the somatic work, where you're going super slow with the breath. And when you come up into cat pose, you might press into your hands just a little bit more so that you get a little nice sensation in your upper back. One more time. Okay. Now we're going to move into a little bit of an extended child's pose here. So knees are going to go wider, feet are going to come together, and hips are going to go back. And you find your way here, so you could use anything behind your feet and your hips if your knees don't do this deep flexion. And then walk your hands forward, put your elbows on the floor, put your palms together. And I like to wiggle my elbows forward more. You're going to melt your chest and head down and put your hands behind your head. And I want you to think here about your elbows kind of gliding forward or moving forward. So that you can feel this this action around your chest and your upper arms, maybe even in your shoulders.
And if you can, this sense of the elbows moving forward and the hips moving back can create this action from the elbows all the way along the sides of your body and into your hips. And letting your hips
Move as far back as you can, creating that stretch or that drag. Noticing the breath around the ribs and around the upper torso. See if you can feel an expansion or this spanda, this contraction and expansion around the middle and upper body. Spanda, I like that word, spanda. Okay, take a nice deep breath. And then slowly come out of this, come back to that tabletop position. And stretch your right leg back behind you. Turn your toes under. We did this when we were down on our belly. And you press your heel back to open up the back of the knee. And then switch sides. So if knee range of motion is hard for you, it's not a bad thing to challenge it just a little bit so that you can actually get into the lymph behind the knee. And then go ahead and rest. Okay, so coming to sitting. I want to take you through, I got to take the shirt off. There's so much fabric in the shirt, I can't, I don't think you can see what I'm even doing. So we're going to go through zigzag, which we do often in this class. It's one of my favorite actions for the hip and the spine. So if you remember, you sit on, let's start on one hip. I'm going to be on my left, so you might be on your right. And your legs are in the zigzag fashion. Okay. I'm going to ask you today to move instead of around to the backside. I want you to go over this front knee. So wherever leg you're leaning on, that's the knee I want you to be facing. And I want you to think more about this back leg today. So as we're here, you can walk your hands forward a little, and this makes it easier on your lower back. You can walk your hands up more, and it could make it a little bit more of a back bend. Find what works for you. I'm going to go a little bit forward. And I want you to start to stretch this leg out behind you. And go wherever you can go. I want you to keep the ankle on the floor. So just notice how you're trying to maybe twist it. The knee can stay on the floor, or you can push it away. You should feel a big action in this hip flexor psoas lower belly region. And then you're here breathing. We're going to stay here for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to maybe, depending on how you feel, move toward the floor. So the more action is in the back leg today.
This front leg, if you've got more mobility, the foot can move forward a little so that you start to actually feel something in your front leg hip. And then if you want, see if you want to come down on your forearms. Now that's not available to everybody. And it takes some of the action away from the back leg, puts it more in the front leg. So just decide. One isn't better than the other. They're just different. We find our way into the breath. We find our way into stillness. Listening and having a dialogue with the sensations in the body. And then take a nice deep breath. And then slowly starting to move your way back away from that floor action. Bend this back knee if you straightened it. And then come right forward so legs are out in front of you. You take a minute here in the middle. I brushed my dog last night and clipped him, and I've got dog hair everywhere, I'm noticing. Goodness. All right. So once you feel like you kind of reset a little, let's try the other side. So I want you to bend your knees in that zigzag shape like we were doing before. You're gonna go over this front knee, so you're just gonna have like one hand on each side of your front knee so that you can start to twist a little, but go slow, go easy, because this can be challenging. Walk your hands forward if it feels like it's too much, and see if you can start to stretch this back leg out behind you. So if this looks a little familiar, it's a variation of pigeon pose where it's a little bit more doable. Remember, if you feel like there's a little bit more freedom in this front leg, you can always wiggle this front foot up a little. We're going to be here for about 30 seconds, and then if you want, you can come down onto your forearms. Trying to keep your body still as best as you can so that the mind can become still. All right, so maybe you want to come down on your forearms. You could check. You could say, yeah, that feels pretty good, or no, I don't really think so. Back up on your arms. Yin Yoga is really an exploration of your own internal body. It's less about what you look like, and it's more about what you feel. And so you create a shape where you can feel this tension. Not uncommon to feel the tension around the joints because that's where a lot of the fascia is wrapped. But the fascia is everywhere in the body, so you can feel it anywhere. And again, it's so interesting to me to feel the variations from side to side.
And we soften the breath and we soften the eyes. And we notice that the tongue is on the roof of the mouth. Just reminding you that when you're still, the mind can be still. And we can enter what I like to call the flow state. This place of sukha, ease. Take one more breath. And then slowly starting to make your way up. When you're upright, start to bend this back leg towards you and then bring your legs out in front of you and sit nice and straight. You can even hold your arms a little bit upright. The next action we're going to do is for the front body again, and I want you to, if you feel tight in your hips, take something, not a high folded blanket, but maybe a low folded blanket, or I'm sitting up on this little beanbag sack. Put it under your tail, under your sit bones, and then walk your feet in towards you. So you're like a cobbler's pose, like Baddha Konasana. And you're just going to stay here for a moment. Just notice how that feels. And then we're going to take the hands behind us. If you can turn the fingers backwards, go ahead and do that. If that feels too hard, turn them sideways. And I want you to walk your hands behind you a little bit. And if you can, shoulder distance apart. From here, soften the elbows. And again, if you can't do that, change your hand position. And then press through your hands to arch your back. And then you can adjust yourself, like, I can't really get a good arch, so I'm going to move my hands in more. Or that feels way too hard on my forearms, I'm going to turn my hands sideways. So this is about opening the chest. And if you could think in your mind about seated fish pose, it's a little bit like that. So you're pushing with your arms, you're lifting your chest, and you can decide with your head, if you slide your head back and let your head kind of rest in your shoulders, you can do that. Otherwise, drop your chin into your chest. There's a lot of variation here in this particular shape. And the rule in yin pose is to not make it so hard that you literally cannot be here. You're weighted in your hands, and I want some tension in your hands on purpose. Remember, the fascia is wrapped around all the joints in your hands. So if you are one of those people that say, oh, I've got arthritis and it hurts, well, find a way that you can actually adjust and be with it. Let the tension be in your hands. It's important that we get that hydrated tissue in your fascia, in your hands, wrist, forearms. And if you feel like, nothing's happening, just adjust your hands. If you turn your fingers backward, you're going to get a lot more sensation. You bring your hands closer toward each other, you get a lot more sensation. So just play here until you can find your edge. Pushing that chest up, and you could drop your chin down on purpose to create some throat tension. Breathing. I find this one for me to be one of the harder actions to do because we are so tight in our hands, forearms, from all of the use that we've used our hands for, typing, knitting, cooking, just all the things you use your hands for. You typically don't take time to stretch them. Keep thinking about lifting the chest. You can keep thinking about the chin resting on the chest like you're creating a little bit of a pillow for your chin. Notice what's happening around your neck. Where's your tongue? I can tell I need to do this one a lot more. There's a lot going on in this one for me. Nice deep breath. And then very slowly starting to bring yourself off of your arms and just sit tall for a minute. It's not uncommon for that to feel hard. And then from here, I just want you to push your feet forward. We're going to come into the easy one now, butterfly pose. Remember, you can use your blocks or your bolster or your blanket. And if I were using my blocks, I might put them like this so I can fit my elbows on them and hold my head. Or I might put my block up high so I can put my head on my block and let my arms feel relaxed. Find a place where you can be. And so you can even, if you don't want to support your head, you can even just rest on your blocks or your bolster with your forearms. You might want to reach your arms long, kind of giving you a different sensation through your body. In this one, it's ideal if you close your eyes, go inward. If your head is on something, it's going to be easier for you to drop in. It helps remind your mind to become quiet. I used the word spanda earlier, and I think about the pulsing of our being. The obvious one is the pulsing of the breath. But we have pulsing all through our bodies. The cells pulsate. I think of like have you ever watched a jellyfish move through the water and how they pulse? It's kind of what our cells do. They're not rigid. They're not hard. They move and they expand and contract based on lots of things. You could think about your energy pulsing. Like, when do you feel very open and free and expansive? And then when do you feel very contracted and inward? That's a pulse of the energy system. You might even consider the pulse of the mind. We have this expansion and contraction all the time with however we're thinking, whatever we might be doing. In this case, in this yin practice, I'm hoping that we're doing more expanding. We feel more flow. We notice more ease. That's spanda. And then when we get up and move around and go have our cup of tea or whatever we're going to do, that might be more of a contraction. That's more inward. That's more, I've got to get things done. So we go back and forth through this all the time. And the challenge is, especially in our world today, we don't get stuck in contraction. We don't go on and on and on about all the things to validate how we feel. We let go of the outside world and we come inward and feel expansion within us. It's a beautiful way to manage your life if you can do it. Take one more breath here. And then slowly start to come up. All right, so we're going to move everything off of the mat. We're going to come down onto our backs. Finding your way into just a nice supine position here. Take a moment. I want you to adjust yourself
Bring your feet apart and your knees together in that constructive rest pose, and bring your hands on your body. So one hand above the other. Softening your jaw, remember your tongue. And breathing in and out through the nostrils. Expanding and contracting through the breath. So feel that expansion as you inhale. And then feel the contraction or the moving inward as you exhale. I haven't talked about the breath much at all as far as shaping it. So here I want you to think about the exhale being a little bit longer. And I want you to feel that contraction in the abdomen as you try to push out a little bit more air. An interesting fun fact that you might not remember is when we're exhaling, we're regulating our breath with carbon dioxide. So we inhale oxygen and we exhale CO2. And it's the carbon dioxide that is the calming agent in the body. It's not the oxygen. The oxygen is actually the activating agent. And so when we're trying to regulate our nervous system, we're working with the vagal tone of the vagus nerve. You focusing on the exhale. Yogis have known this for thousands of years. It's a wonderful tool that you can do anywhere and anytime to bring you back to yourself, bring you back to that regulated state. After your next exhale, you can relax that intention and just go ahead and move yourself into Shavasana. Remember to cover yourself up. Remember to make yourself feel really comfortable. You take the time to set yourself up well. And then once you're settled, you've got yourself the way you want to be. Take a nice deep breath and let the exhale move you into stillness.
Take a longer and deeper breath. And slowly starting to stretch and move, bringing yourself back to the body. And as you feel ready, you can start to bend your knees, gently rolling to a side. Make your way up to sitting. And once you're seated, the hands come to the heart center. And gratitude as always for our time together on the mat. This Yin Yoga tool that we have to keep us healthy and vibrant. Our deep body wisdom and guiding light. May our light always shine brightly, and may we always see the light in each other. Namaste.